Hello, Leah.
Could you do me a favor and dedicate this shiur to my mother's refuah shlema?
Absolutely. Absolutely. What's her
Her
name?
name is Bella
Bella
Dobra. Bella
Dobra.
Dobra Bat Rachel.
Bella Dobra Bas Rachel. Absolutely.
Yeah, tomorrow we're taking a big test, so we shall see.
Okay.
Bezrat Hashem.
Yeah, absolutely. Bella Dobra Bas Bracha.
Rachel. Rachel. Write it down, Mindy. Write it down. Bella
Right there.
Dobra Bat Rachel.
Rachel. Okay. All right, down right here. Hello, Richard. Bella Dobra Bas
Hello.
Rachel. Hey, how are you?
Baruch Hashem, doing good.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Leah, did I spell it right? Is that the name?
I didn't see it, sorry.
It's on the chat. Yeah, Bella Dobra Bas Rachel.
Thank you.
What's her age? What's her chapter of Tehillim?
She's 86. I do 87.
Chapter
She
87.
tells everybody she's 83, but she's really 86.
Good morning.
Good morning,
Good
Eugenia.
afternoon.
Good morning. Good morning. All right. Chapter 87. Here we
Thank
have
you.
it. Absolutely. Actually, you know what? I can pull it up on the screen. Pull it up on the screen. Let's do that. Here. We'll start off today with saying some Tehillim for Leah's mother, Bella Dobra Bas Rachel. And also have in mind the Yeshayahu ben Chaya. And I'm going to share the screen. We'll say Bella Dobra Bas Rachel's capital of Tehillim, her chapter of Tehillim, to her age +1. So it's right here. It's a shortish chapter. So I'll lead it in the Hebrew, and you can follow along or say it in the English. Livnei Koirach Mizmar Shir Yisudasai Bahadei Kodesh. Oyhei Vadinai Shari Tzion Mikael Mishkenais Yaakov. Nichbadais Vidubar Bach Ir Ha'elihim Sela. Azkir Rahav Uvavel Liyoidai Hine Fleshas Vitzar Im Kush Zayulad Sham. Ulitzion Ye Omar Ish Viish Yulad Bah Vhu Yecheneha Elyoin. Adinai Yisper Bechsev Amim Zayulad Sham Sela. Visharim Kechoililim Kol Mayonai Bach. So only hear of good news, good things. Hello, Reggie. Welcome. Oh, I thought he was here. All right. I guess he's coming soon. Okay, so let's start off. That's strange. Seeing things. All right. Anyways, we'll keep in mind for our learning today, Bella Dobra Bas Rachel, she should have a refuah shalema, and we should hear of very positive and wonderful things, news and healing in the absolute sense of the word. And we will learn on her for her merit. So let's jump right in to today's Chumash. And I want to welcome everybody on Facebook and all those that will be watching this later. So I've gotten a few messages that people like watching it later too. So hello to everybody later. And let's jump right in. So I'm going to share the screen. Going to share the screen with today's Chumash. Now today's Chumash is very short. So what I want to do today is actually go through it like we used to, Chumash Rashi, and touch on a few of the things there. And then if we have more time, we'll go back to yesterday to the Omer, which is a very big deal in our day-to-day life today. And it's in yesterday's Chumash. Vayidaber Adonai el Moshe lemar. The Almighty speaks to Moshe. Daber el bnei Yisrael lemar. Tell the Jewish people. On the 7th month, the first day of the month. Remember, we're in the holiday mode. We're talking about holidays. Yesterday, we spoke about Pesach, Shavuos, and the Omer in between. And today, we move on to Rosh Hashanah, and we're going to talk about Yom Kippur as well. And then tomorrow, we move on to Sukkot. So we get all the holidays. So here we have, this is going to be Rosh Hashanah. Now, Rosh Hashanah literally means the beginning of the year. However, it's celebrated, as the Torah calls it here, in the 7th month, Chodesh HaShvi'i. Okay? Now, it's just fascinating to note that in general, there are no months in the Torah. It's not a thing. The whole idea of what we call the Hebrew months, like the Hebrew month we're in right now is the month of Iyar, or, Rosh Hashanah is in the month of Tishrei, or Tishri, according to some. Depends how you pronounce it. Hello, Shaul. Welcome.
Good afternoon,
Good
Mendy,
afternoon.
and everyone else.
You're safe to say good afternoon now.
Yes, except to those who are in Texas or somewhere else.
Well, we have Eugenia and Reggie's back. Hello, Reggie. Reggie in Ohio. Are you an hour before us, Reggie?
No.
Same time zone. Eastern.
Same time. All right. So Eugenia is keeping us in the morning.
Yeah, 2 hours behind.
2 hours behind. All right. Look at that. I actually once took a flight. I was studying in Manchester, England. I took a flight. It was at 10 o'clock in the morning to New York, and a 7-hour flight got me into New York at 2 hours later. Can you figure that out? So I landed at 12 p.m. So I had an extra 7 hours to my day that day. Pretty cool. Then there was the time I flew from Australia to Montreal.
Oh, yeah.
Somehow I missed a day. I didn't experience a Wednesday that week. Yeah. Or the other way around. And I had a double one. Anyways, it was, pretty crazy. All right. So let's jump back in. So there's no months in the Torah. The whole idea of the months, as I was saying, that what we officially call Hebrew months, appears first in the books of the prophets, or not even later. We have mention of a month in the Megillah, in the story of Esther, which is part of the writings, part of the scripture, the third section of Tanakh. Otherwise, there's not much mention of months. We have in the Purim story, we have the month of Adar mentioned quite.
Prominently.
Sorry. Quite. What's the word?
Prominently.
Prominently. That's exactly what I was looking for. Thank you. Wow, you read my thoughts. So quite.
That's dangerous.
That's
That's dangerous.
That's dangerous. Oh, reading my thoughts. Yeah, exactly. I think I'm gonna push my screen a little down. I don't want you to see. All right. It's like from headphones to headphones. Okay. There's some transmission going on over here. All right. You're reminding me of all these stories. Okay. Anyways, how are you, Leslie? Good to see you.
Okay, yourself.
Welcome back. Baruch Hashem, doing all right. And Isidore. Oh, you can't hear us yet. Okay. So let's understand what exactly happened with the Hebrew months. Just an interesting fun fact. My yeshiva Snapple fact is that the Hebrew months only were introduced in Babylon, in Bavel, and actually most of them are Babylonian names. In fact, the reason why we use such Babylonian names for what we officially call, again, the Hebrew months, is because when we go down to a place, we bring it up with us. So one of the ways that we elevated Babylon, which was a prime Jewish center for many years, almost over 1,000 years, 1,500 years, Babylon was the Jewish center. We're talking about post First Temple era and onwards. The Talmud, of course, came from Babylon. So one of the ways we elevated Babylon was by taking some names of theirs and making them the Jewish months. It's quite a fascinating way to recognize our mission in the lands that we are in. We're always there to take with us, to elevate, not just to leave it behind or leave it down and kind of survive. We're here with a mission to thrive off and with the place that we're in, just like we did in Egypt, as we spoke about a few months ago when we spoke about that. Okay, so that is the idea. But until Babylon, the months in the Torah are called by numbers. So it's the 7th month. We had the Pesach is in the 1st month. Okay, so let's clarify that. And welcome to Avigail. Welcome back. And Batel, I'm sure, is around. And Marlene is with us. Hello, Marlene.
Hi.
Hello. Welcome back to Zoom. And there was someone else that came on. I guess we lost him. All right. Let's understand, how is Rosh Hashanah, which officially means the beginning of the year, how does that end up in the 7th month? It's a little bit confusing. And the answer is that, actually, I wanted to pull this up for us, but I didn't. So, okay, I'm not going to waste our time now and pull it up now. But the idea is basically that from when the world was created, the world was created, let's put it that way, at the beginning of the year, what we celebrate Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is the birth of man. So the actual 6 days of creation started 6 days before Rosh Hashanah. And Rosh Hashanah is the 6th day of creation, the day that Adam and Eve were created, Adam and Chava. That becomes the beginning of the year, and that's called Tchilat or Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of the year. That's a global thing. The idea of months, which follow the moon. The moon is a Jewish concept. We own the moon, right? No. We, you know the story of Chelm, where they were doing, we talked about yesterday, Kiddush Levana, the sanctification of the new moon. And by the way, just to note that the idea, as I said yesterday, to say Kiddush Levana, to say that prayer on page 301 outside in the 2nd week of the Hebrew month, to try to catch the moon and say that prayer there with the blessing is actually, as it lays out today, is customarily done only by men, not by women. Different reasons, predominantly the fact that it's a time constrained mitzvah. Other reasons as well, but just a good thing to know. Otherwise, the idea of the moon saying Kiddush Levana is the famous story where in Chelm, they live like us in Montreal. They can never find the moon. Had wintry, a lot, most of the year was winter, right? They say there's 2 seasons in Montreal, winter and June or July, right? That's what they say. So the same thing was in Chelm. So most of the year they couldn't have, the moon was behind the clouds and they couldn't say the blessing. So finally they figured out a trick that they took a barrel of water and they caught the moon's reflection and they quickly covered the barrel and they figured that the moon is stuck with them now. And they had it stuck with them in the shul's basement. And the next year or the next month, they took out the barrel of water and lo and behold, someone had stolen the moon. It was not there. But the Jewish people are very connected to the moon. And sorry?
My grandfather would call it Helmimisis.
Helmimisis. There you go. Exactly. Such one of the tractates in the Talmud is Baba Mises. No, just a joke. But yes, that's a Baba Misa. But there's always a grain of truth. The connection that we have with the moon is in the fact that the moon is constantly renewing itself, reaching a full peak, and then kind of waning down, and then it disappears, and then it comes back, never really disappears. But the Jewish people are very much like that, constantly in renewal. We get up to a peak, we kind of get taken down, and then we come back up. We're constantly on a cycle of up and down, always with the hope that the next day will be better. And if it's not, it will be the next day, just like the moon. So other reasons as well that connect us to the moon, but being as such, so when it comes to months, the months have a special connection with, which again, the month being led by the moon appearing, and that's when the month begins. So therefore, it's a special Jewish thing. When do the Jewish people become a people? Anybody want to take a guess? When did the Jewish people become a people? When did we become a nation?
When
Officially.
they got the Torah. When they got the Torah.
When we got the Torah, that was kind of the end of it. You're right. That was when it was probably the second stage, but the first stage when we left Egypt. So on the way to get the Torah. Again, the Torah was the final blow. But God taking us out of Egypt, the prophets describe it as I've given birth to a nation. And that's when we were born. Maybe the giving the Torah was like our circumcision, became holy. But becoming a nation was our Exodus. So the month of Nisan, the month of Pesach, when we celebrate the Exodus, becomes the first month in the count of months. That's a little confusing. When you have Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of the year is different than the beginning of the months. Rosh Chodesh Nisan, as we learned, actually, I think our first parsha that we learned together. No, actually, one of the first parshas we learned together, Parshat Bo, says that this is the Chodesh Hazeh Rosh Chadashim. Rosh Chodesh Nisan, again, the month when we came out of Egypt, that's going to be the first of the months. And that's how it becomes that Tishrei, which is the month of Rosh Hashanah, the month where we celebrate the beginning of the year, becomes the seventh month, although it is still the beginning of the year, because months are being counted differently than the years. The years go by the fact when the world was created, and the months go by when the Jewish people became a people. Okay, let's move on. So Rosh Hashanah is on the seventh month, on the first of the month. And in the fact that it's the seventh month, the word seven, shvi'i, also shares the same root word as sova or savua. The word is of satisfaction. In Hebrew, someone we have it in va'achalta, visavata, virachta. Right? You should eat. You'll be satiated.
Mm-hmm.
Satiated, exactly. That's the word. Satiated. Thank you, Leah. And you shall bless God. So the idea of being satiated is in the seventh month, being that it's a month full of holidays, and Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, and etc. It's like the holy month of the year. It's the Hasidic teachers teach us, the Hasidic rabbis teach us that it's the month where we are satiated. Our godly soul is satiated with all the power it needs for the rest of the year. So it's the Chodesh HaShavi'i. If you change the shin and the sin are interchangeable, it becomes a word of satiating. The month which satiates our souls, gives it power. It's the charge up month. So what is going to be on the first day of that month? Yelachem Shabbos. It's going to be a day of rest, Shabbos. What kind of day of rest? Zichron Trua. So Zichron Trua literally means a remembrance through a trua. A trua is a blast, what's learned to be a shofar blast. Now, and then the verse continues, Mikra Kodesh. It should be a holy occasion, a day where it's a holy, it's called holy. And we're actually going to find out later, actually in a few verses from now, that the idea of Mikra Kodesh, which is kind of a common phrase that we see used for the holidays, actually is a command, is a commandment. I don't know if you want to say commandment, but it's telling us something. It's giving us an order. And that is that the order of the day is to call the day holy, which means in this context, to honor the day by wearing what we call Shabbos clothing or holiday clothing, wearing our finest, by eating good foods. So we have the Shabbos meal, we have the holiday meals. That is all part of Mikra Kodesh. That's how we call it holy, by eating and dressing. Kind of an interesting turn of flip on the word holy, which perhaps others see as kind of, not in the dress and not in the food, but sorry.
Does it say, it says on the first day of the month, does it say it's 2 days, or it doesn't say?
No, it's only 1 day.
Days.
It's only 1 day. Why is Rosh Hashanah 2 days? Good question. And the answer is that just like all the holidays are 2 days, all the holidays are 2 days in Chutz La'aretz, in the diaspora. The reason being, as we discussed yesterday, that Rosh Chod, that the idea of the month or the calendar used to be in temple times very fluid. It was all based off the High Court's proclamation on that month. And there was a whole system of how the court there would have to be people that saw the new moon, and they'd have to come and testify before the court, and the court would investigate and interrogate, and only by the court's actual proclamation would the new month commence. So it was a very much based off the court's proclamation, not so much a fixed. It wasn't so fixed like we have it today. Being as such, sorry.
But in Israel, it's 2 days also.
Yes. I'm going to get there. Yes, I'm going to get there. So the idea is that being as such, every community needed to find out when Rosh Chodesh was, and based off that, they would celebrate 15 days later the holiday in Tishrei, or the holiday which is Sukkot, or the holiday of Pesach, which is in Nisan, or Shavuot was 6 days later. It was all based off, well, actually Shavuot is a different story, but basically the holidays were all centered around when Rosh Chodesh was. Now, depending on how far off the community was, would be how long it took for the messengers from the court to bring the message that Rosh Chodesh was on this day and not the day before or the next day. It was always centered around, it was an option of 1 or 2 days based off when the moon was seen. The new moon was seen. Being as such, so eventually when that happened, the people that didn't get the message on time, they would celebrate 2 days just in case, because it was always either one of those 2 days. And then when the calendar was finally made by Hillel II, which was, as I said yesterday, a time when the Jewish people were slowly but surely being dispersed, and there was no more central temple, and it was a time when people needed to carry around the calendar with them to all the far-off countries that they were being exiled to. And there was no high court coming along with them. So that's when they decided that any community pretty much outside of the land of Israel, where usually that was those communities that got the message very late, and therefore they were the ones that had 2 days, they would keep to that tradition of having 2-day holidays. And those communities that were in Israel mostly and therefore were in closer connection to the court, to the high court in Jerusalem, and therefore got the message on time, they would stick to 1-day holidays. That's how they would stick to that tradition. That's how it came to today, that we have most of our holidays outside of the land of Israel is 2 days, and in the land of Israel is 1 day. Till today, you'll find that. Except for, as Leah said, Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is the only time that there are 2 days in Israel as well. They celebrate 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. And the reason is because Rosh Hashanah is on the first of the month. It's the only holiday that actually is a Rosh Chodesh. Okay, so the only way to really find out which day was proclaimed as Rosh Chodesh was after Rosh Hashanah. So you had to base it off it was all based off the previous month's proclamation, which was 30 days prior, and then you never know after 30 days is the 30th day going to be Rosh Chodesh or the 31st day going to be Rosh Chodesh. Depends if they saw the moon, when they saw the moon. So therefore, even communities very close to the high court would only hear about the proclamation after Rosh Hashanah, which was on the actual day when the high court proclaimed this is the beginning of the new month. So therefore, everyone celebrated the 2 optional days that Rosh Hashanah could have been on, that Rosh Chodesh, hence Rosh Hashanah, could have been on. I hope that was somewhat clear. Okay. I guess I should have said this earlier. Let me add one more thing, and this deserves a class on its own. But one more thing to add in, just parenthetically, which will perhaps clarify the whole idea, is that the moon does follow a system. The moon does reappear every 29 and a half days. Okay, and for those that know astronomy or geometry, no, I'm just kidding. But for those that know astronomy, they're going to know that's something that's every 29 and a half days. The moon does reappear. Okay, it does return to its beginning cycle. The question is, do we celebrate therefore on that night, which is the 30th day when the new moon is now appearing, or if the moon was not visible for whatever reason, or if no one saw the moon, so then it would for sure have to have appeared by the end of that 29th day, which means the 30th day was for sure going to be the end of the month, and therefore the next day, the 31st day, is for sure the beginning of the new month. So it was always, basically, the idea is that it was always a window of 2 days of when Rosh Chodesh had to be. if the witnesses came up, if the witnesses were on, if the people were looking out, they would usually find it on time, and therefore Rosh Chodesh usually would be on the 30th day of the month, making the 30th day the new month, which means the previous month only had 29 days. Whereas if nobody was on the lookout, or for whatever reason it was a cloudy night and they couldn't see the moon, then they would have to proclaim Rosh Chodesh. The High Court would have to proclaim Rosh Chodesh by the next day already. They would give a whole day for witnesses to come forth. If the witnesses didn't come forth, then the 31st day of the month would for sure become the first day of the month, and that means that the previous month had 30 days. That's why till today in the calendar we have months which have 29 days, months that have 30 days, because the moon always has to show up either on the 30th or the 31st. Which means the previous month will either have 29 days or 30 days. This is the geometry of the astronomy. Okay, so that's the idea. So again, because Rosh Hashanah is the only holiday in the year which falls out on Rosh Chodesh, it falls out on the beginning of the month. Therefore, every community pretty much only found out when the High Court proclaimed it Rosh Chodesh after Rosh Hashanah. So everyone celebrated 2 days just in case one of those 2 days was the actual Rosh Chodesh. Okay, I hope I conveyed that somewhat clearly. I'm going to move on. Zichron Trua, so the idea is that it's a remembrance of a shofar blast. Why is it called a remembrance? And Rashi right away points out that there is, in our prayers on Rosh Hashanah, we do mention verses of the shofar blowing. Rashi says it in the wording Zichron Psuke Zechrenes Upsuke Shofres. What that means is our Rosh Hashanah davening in the Machzor is made up of. We're talking about the Amida prayer, the Amida of the Musaf prayer. Okay, the Musaf prayer is usually where we have the holiday celebrated in the prayer. The holiday, whichever holiday it is described at great length in the Musaf Amida. You'll notice that in the Shabbos Amida. There's a special Shabbos Shmona Esrei for Shacharis, the first Shmona Esrei that we say. Yes, and that talks about the holiness of Shabbos. But where we really get to the bottom, to the real practical way that the day is celebrated in the temple with this actual sacrifices, that will only be mentioned in Musaf usually. So it's the same thing, Rosh Hashanah. The actual holiday is highlighted in the Musaf prayer. Same thing in Yom Kippur. The actual holiday is highlighted in the Musaf. You see that in each holiday like that. So the Musaf really is where we highlight the specialness, the uniqueness of the day in a very special way. Rosh Hashanah. How do we highlight Rosh Hashanah? So we have three sections really made up of many paragraphs. In between the beginning blessings and the end blessings, every Amida prayer, right? Every Amida prayer has the three introductory blessings and the three final blessings, which are shared in every single Amida, no matter which day, which Amida, it's always the same, right? The Modem Anachnu Lach at the end, you have the Magen Avraham at the beginning, and those sections are always shared. The middle section is where it varies. So on a regular weekday, we have 13 middle blessings. In a Shabbos, when we have one middle blessing, Shabbos Yom Tov, we have one middle blessing. Musaf on Rosh Hashanah gets three middle blessings, three sections, and those three sections are called what's Zichronos, Shofros, and Malchios, which means we bring together, we mention different verses. In our Siddur, it's 10 verses throughout the Tanakh, from throughout the Tanakh, from the Torah, Nevi'im, and Ksuvim, from all three sections of the Tanakh, and we take verses from there, all touching on God's Malchus, God's royalty. That's one section, because Rosh Hashanah is the day we coronate God as king. So that's one section. The other section is Shofros. We take 10 verses from throughout the Tanakh, and where we talk about the idea of blasting a shofar. That's the mitzvah of the day, is to blast the shofar. So, for example, we have a verse in Tehillim, King David's Psalms, We say in the last chapter of Tehillim, Hallelujah, we say, Hallelujah, take a shofar, praise him with the blowing of the shofar, right? So that's if I remember correctly, that's a verse brought down in the Musaf in one of those 10 verses of talking about blasting away with a shofar. And then the third section is remembrances, which is 10 verses from throughout the Tanakh where we talk about God remembering us. Beautiful verses. God remembering us, for good, for the good. And that's really what Zichron Trua is. That's really what this verse is referring to, is the verses that are mentioning the shofar blast. Okay, so it's not the actual shofar blast, it's mentioning the shofar blast. And in fact, on a Rosh Hashanah, which falls out on a Shabbos, you might remember, it happens every so often, when Rosh Hashanah, either day, falls out on a Shabbos, we don't blow the shofar. We don't blow the shofar. What we do is Zichron Trua. We remember the shofar. We mention the shofar. Like any other day of Rosh Hashanah, we mention these verses, but in fact, one of the parts of the prayers, on a regular weekday Rosh Hashanah, you only say Cherua, and if it's a Shabbos, you'll say these words, Zichron Trua. Okay, you'll have to keep this in mind for Rosh Hashanah coming up in a few months. To now you have a little bit more of a background as to the nuanced differences of the prayer when it comes to Shabbos Rosh Hashanah or weekday Rosh Hashanah. Okay, what's the overall remembrance that we are? I'm just going to put everyone on mute. And then, of course, everyone has the ability, as always, to unmute yourself. And I want to welcome, many others joined us. Welcome to Jerry. Hello, Jerry. And George is with us. And Irma, welcome. And I think everyone, and Tim. Okay, fantastic. Welcome. All right. What's the overall remembrance? Or thing that we want to keep it, we want God to remember, the Almighty to remember on Rosh Hashanah, is the Akedas Yitzchak, the binding of Isaac, which happened on Rosh Hashanah. Which happened, if I remember correctly, what happened on Rosh Hashanah. Something tells me right now that I'm getting that wrong, but for some reason I think I'm right. Okay, I'll have to verify that. But the other connection of the binding of Isaac with Rosh Hashanah is the fact that who took the place of Isaac at the last minute when Isaac was not slaughtered and went off in a helicopter to some unknown place for 3 years, as we discussed earlier this week. But who took his place was a ram, and that ram was a very special ram. In fact, that ram was created in the beginning of creation, a special time. It talks about the ram. It was a holy ram, and that ram's horns are mentioned in a very special places. The one horn was used in the shofar blast by Mount Sinai. That was the left horn, and the right horn will be used to herald in the coming of Mashiach. So it's a special shofar, but the ram with its horns is kind of what we blow the shofar is a ram's horn. So we reminding Hashem about the sacrifice that we as the Jewish people we started off with, our forefather Avraham, and what that opened the door for all coming generations, the self-sacrifice that we gave up our lives and put our lives on at risk to honor Hashem's name. And that's something we want to keep. We want Hashem to remember on Rosh Hashanah, as it is a day of judgment and a day which decides the fate of each individual for the upcoming year. Okay, that is the first Rashi. Let's move along. Kol melachas avoda lo yisasu. So again, we notice that the wording here is melechet avoda. Like we pointed out yesterday, the idea is that whenever it says these words, melechet avoda, then there is that ability to usually, and again, this is not necessarily the source of it, but usually when we see the word melechet avoda together, those two words, it's like a double phrase for work. All work can be done. Melacha and avoda are both works. Usually that's taken as an indication that it's a day which we are permitted to cook and carry, again, cooking from an existing flame, like we do on most holidays, which is not Shabbos or Yom Kippur. Ve'kraftem ishal Hashem, and of course it comes with the sacrifice that is brought special for Rosh Hashanah. Rashi points out that those are the special musafim, the additional sacrifices besides for the daily sacrifices, which are actually enumerated at length and in detail in the book of Numbers in Parshas Pinchas, I believe it is. Okay, that's Rosh Hashanah. And then we move along to Yom Kippur. The Almighty speaks to Moshe, saying like this. Let's just remind ourselves beautifully, a beautiful thing to always remember is why so many times does it say that the Almighty spoke to Moshe? The Almighty spoke to Moshe. We got the point. He spoke to him yesterday. He spoke to him we started off with the same verse. Probably the most common phrase in the Torah is these words. Vayedaber Hashem al Moshe Lemar. It's verse 23. And the Lord spoke to Moses. And then verse 26. And what happened? Nothing happened in between, apparently. Or it doesn't look like it did. But the truth is, something did happen in between. And that is, this is called a paragraph in the Torah. Okay, it doesn't show it here, but if you look in the Torah scroll, between verse 25 and verse 26, there's going to be a space. Okay, between verse 26 and verse 27, there is no space in the actual Torah scroll. It's a direct flow. So the idea of having the space between 25 and 26 is because when the Almighty was teaching Moshe all these laws, he gave him every so many lines, time to review. And if Moshe needed the time to review, to retain the knowledge, how much more so do we? That is the idea. Okay, so what's the next commandment? What's the next statement here? Yom HaKippurim hu. So it starts off but what? It's almost like a mid sentence. When in 8th grade, my English teacher was very much into us writing, getting us to write a lot. I actually wrote a lot of essays, and actually I found one just a few days ago. It's pretty cool to see what I wrote so many years ago. But one of the lessons he taught us is you never start a sentence with the word "and," right? That common denominator between American and Canadian. That was in America. All right, you don't start a paragraph or a sentence with the word "and." So why are you starting off with the word but? Almost like something happened. Oh, you remember, So Rashi's going to tell us that is actually a way of the Torah indicating. It's a way of the Torah indicating to us that something here it needs to be taken in context, and we're going to find out what that is in a moment. But let's keep that in mind. So we're talking about the 10th day of the month. Yom HaKippurim on the 7th month. We're still in the 7th month on the 10th day. Okay, so Rosh Hashanah is the first day. Yom Kippur is the 10th day. It's Yom HaKippurim. It's a day of atonement. Mikra Kodesh Yelachem. Again, it's a day which is Mikra Kodesh. We're going to find out again. We're going to see Mikra Kodesh here again means to celebrate the day or to mark the day not with good food because we fast on Yom Kippur, but with proper clothing. We're supposed to dress to the nine. That's halacha. It's a part of the mitzvah of honoring a Shabbos and our holiday is to wear Shabbos clothing, not just for the synagogue, but the whole Shabbos. We wear Shabbos clothing. We wear special.
No, wait. Not Shabbos robes for the women?
I'm not here to define what is Shabbos clothing, but you'll have to, I don't know, but Shabbos clothing is Shabbos clothing, whatever it means. I don't. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. All right. So how is the 10th day marked? With afflicting your souls, afflicting yourselves. Now, what does that mean? Afflicting yourselves. Now we take it for granted that afflicting oneself is fasting, but nowhere in the Torah does it actually say, if I remember correctly. Or at least not here, does it say not to eat? All it says again and again is afflict yourself. So how do we know from the Torah that afflicting yourself means not to eat? Okay, so the Talmud has to tell us the oral tradition that comes along. This is one of the proofs, I would think, one of the ways to really find out again that something which Judaism took for granted, or Jewish people take for granted. Yom Kippur is a day to fast. Whether or not you believe in what's going on, everyone knows Yom Kippur is a day to fast. Now, who said that? Well, you have to look in the written Torah. Well, the oral Torah tells us that afflicting yourself is not whipping yourself. Doesn't mean doesn't mean go sit down in a preschool. It doesn't mean roll in snow. It means to fast. So that the oral Torah tells us that. It comes hand in hand with the written Torah. Good thing to keep in mind. So that's one thing that we do. And also, V'yikraftem Ish Hashem, it's also a day to bring sacrifices. What is the exclusion? what is the ach in this verse that we are, who are we excluding? So the idea is that if we notice, the day of Yom Kippur is first defined. Okay, we saw 3 definitions for it in this verse. We saw it's called a Yom HaKippurim, that becomes the name forever, which means the Day of Atonement. Now, the Day of Atonement does not mean the day that you need to ask forgiveness. Let's keep that in mind. The Day of Atonement means it's a day that atones, which kind of sounds automatic. And to many, even in the Talmud, many a holier source say, and this has definitely a truth to it, that the day itself, it provides atonement. Just by experiencing the day, atonement is accomplished. However, the majority opinion is, and this is the opinion that we follow by, is that the day itself provides a infinite type of atonement for those that are accepting of it. Accepting of it means those that are willing to do teshuvah, those that want to change.
Sorry, are you saying atonement is forgiveness?
Atonement is, well, atonement, the truth is, I don't know the proper English to tell you the difference between the 2 words. But the way I understand forgiveness is, well, let me explain what I'm saying, and then whether it's atonement or forgiveness will probably make no difference. But the idea is that atonement, that the way the Torah explains what kapara, what atonement is that we have the ability to change our past, or our past can be changed, which is something that's impossible for a human to do, because the past is the past, and it's unchangeable. So we could ask forgiveness for the past, we can make amends for the past, but it's always on the superficial, because deep down it's still there. It's still there. It happened. That's nothing we can do about. The power of the Day of Atonement, which is something which is only within the reach of the infinite, is that the past is erased. The past never happened. That's something only God can accomplish. He gives us that power when we do teshuvah, when we do a true returning, what's called in English repentance, wrongfully, but when it's returning to Hashem, when we turn around and we decide that we want to do better, and we take it upon ourselves to do better in a very sincere, genuine way, what happens is our past is erased. Our past is erased, and that is the power of teshuvah, and that Yom Kippur, by experiencing the day of Yom Kippur with just the will to live a better life, that it also is provided on Yom Kippur. And that's why for different types of sins, there's different types of there's different levels or different procedures of how a proper teshuvah is accomplished halachically. And one of the for the more severe sins, the idea, or for many sins, the idea is that the person has to go through a Yom Kippur. And the idea is because Yom Kippur, by the very day, a person living through the day of Yom Kippur with just the will to change, the will to act sure to their true selves, to be in line with their true selves, already that itself allows them to tap into the power of the day, which is a day of atonement that provides atonement. Atonement means a complete cleansing, which that's really the word kapara, means a complete cleansing of the past, but a deep cleansing. Not a cleansing on the superficial level, just cleaning the surface. A deep cleansing where nothing remains from the past. Very powerful, infinite power, which we have connection to. So that's Leah. I hope that clarified to some degree what I'm just trying to convey. Then the verses continue. So all of a sudden, if we remember, we're trying to find that difference between Shabbos and holidays. So whereas when it came to the holidays, including Rosh Hashanah, from the beginning of today's portion, it said that the melechet avodah cannot be done. Here it says again, just the word melacha, just like Shabbos, because Yom Kippur, just like Shabbos, is a day when we don't cook, we don't carry. It's a day where we mark the day by acting as if it's Shabbos, and it is. It's actually considered Shabbat Shabbaton. So it's a double Shabbos. So that again, you see the word melacha just being used here, which means no work, period. Nothing, not cooking, not carrying, and nothing else. בעצם היום הזה, כי יום כיפורים הוא לכפר עליכם, it's a day to provide atonement, לפני השם אלוקיכם. And here again, Chassidus teach, oh, wow, look at the time flies, okay, but just to point out, לפני השם אלוקיכם. What does לפני השם אלוקיכם mean? The verse ends off before, so literally means a day of atonement before God. Before, you're facing God. But the truth is, lifnei means we're going way beyond God. How do you go beyond God? Because Yud Kei Vav Kei, the name, the four-letter name of Hashem, is the way that the Almighty interacts with creation in a limited form. And this power of teshuvah, of gaining atonement, demands us to rise above that more condensed natural order of tzimtzum and of creation. We have to go and be a rise of beyond creation, rise to the essence of the Almighty, and only by tapping into that, which is what Yom Kippur gives us the ability to tap into that. We go lefnei Hashem, above Yud Kei Vav Kei. We actually come out completely clean from, and the past has never been there. Okay, so there's more details to that, but we'll leave with that. And thank you so much for joining me here today. And have a wonderful day, everybody. See you tonight at 8 o'clock. Please God, with our Lag BaOmer celebration. All the very best.
Thank you, everybody.
And a reminder for tomorrow, special Lag BaOmer
Right.
Fabringen tomorrow from 12 noon, right? Of connecting with each other and making it into a not just a learning session, but a Lag BaOmer Fabringen, creating community. Hello, everybody, and welcome. How is everybody doing? Okay. Okay, welcome. Welcome, Leah and Saul and Leslie, Tim, and Richard, Irma, Abigail, Reggie, and Eugenia, Jerry, Vilma, George, and David. All right, are we ready for some learning? Okay, let's bring this over here. Let us share the screen. And let us learn some Pirkei Avos, Jewish ethics. We're continuing our journey together. Welcome, Batya, Marcy, Victoria. So we are on the 7th Mishneh in the first chapter. Continuing with Nitai the Arbelite. Nitai, who is from Arbeli, which is Arbel, which is near Tiberias, the northern part of Israel. He was the Av Beis-Din, the head of the Jewish court in his time, together with Yeshua ben Prachia that we spoke about yesterday, who was the Nasi, the leader. And he shares with us his teachings. And what does he say? Harchek mishochin ra. You should distance yourself from a bad neighbor. Al tischabib lerasha. You should not attach yourself to a wicked person. And the third point that he says, Al tisyayesh min haparanies, and do not despair from divine retribution. Don't abandon belief in retribution. So let's take this apart. Let's start with some questions. Before I'm going to ask questions, do you have any questions on that teaching? Again, distance yourself from a bad neighbor. Do not attach yourself to a wicked person. And do not despair from divine retribution. Any questions on the Mishneh? By the way, if anybody has, a siddur and they want to follow along in their own siddur at home and they can make notes that way, by all means.
Well,
Are you talking about distancing mentally and spiritually? Because physically you can't distance yourself from your neighbor. You're talking about spiritually and physically you can distance yourself.
Okay, that's a good question. Yeah. In other words, what does it mean, harchek, to distance yourself?
Mm-hmm,
How do we understand? That's an unusual term.
mm-hmm.
Okay, excellent. Another question, Tim?
Rabbi?
Oh, Saul, go ahead.
In Mishneh 6, it says, this is sort of like an opposite of number 6. Sort of like here, it's sort of like saying, find yourself friends, make yourself a friend. And here it's sort of like saying, stay away from a bad friend. Like, how shall I say it? He's being antisocial.
It seems to be the other side of the coin.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Okay, very good. How do we understand that? That you should be very careful in your judgment of others and judge them notoriously. Okay, excellent. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Marcy.
Is this understood as another way of putting like a fence around the Torah where like don't move into a neighborhood where bad things are happening and don't that kind of distancing, not a judgment of a person per se, but not putting yourself into a situation where you might be led astray.
Right. So the question being, is that what it means as opposed to the judgment? Is it?
I guess, yeah.
Right. So yes, that we are making a distinction here, for sure, which will clarify that distinction. Absolutely, there has to be a distinction between the two, because they are saying different, opposite things. So absolutely. Okay. Thank you. Anything else, Marcy, or anybody else that has a question, an issue, something that doesn't seem to resonate? Well, I have one. What does it mean, al tisyayish min aparonius, that you should not despair from retribution? Like, the connotation is that, God is kind of, telling you, don't worry, I'm going to get you back. It sounds vengeful. That's the question.
I think it's more like people
Well,
are watching.
no. We're only do questions now. We're not giving
Okay, okay.
No. Everything in its right time. Everything in its right time. First questions, then we go into discussion, right? We got to gather all the questions. Otherwise, what's going to happen is we're going to get everything piecemeal and, in the response, right? So I want to get everything first out there. Okay, what else is there? Question. Marcy, go ahead.
I was wondering if it kind of echoes the Psalms, right? Do not despair while the wicked flourish like a cedar in Lebanon. Isn't there a psalm like that?
So the question being?
Is this related to that psalm?
Is this related to this? Okay. Okay, good question. That's in comparison that I'd have to take a look up for to see, but okay, maybe we'll take a look at that later. Very good. Another question. We can understand that you distance yourself from a bad neighbor and don't befriend or attach yourself to the wicked. Okay, there's a similarity there, but what's the third thing? How's that connected? Where is the continuity of idea of don't despair of divine retribution? That doesn't seem to connect with the first 2 points. That's another question.
I'm sorry, I don't know if I missed, I had to go for a minute, but the second point was not to be influenced by someone who's evil. Is that the second one?
Yeah, don't attach yourself to a wicked person, exactly.
Why would someone do that? is my question. Why would you attach yourself to someone evil?
Okay,
Because you don't know it.
Well, I mean, if you don't know it, then how's that going to help you being told that you shouldn't do it if you don't know it? So how
Well,
you got to say that you must. If you don't know that the person's evil, then what does that mean?
you find out that he's evil through later on.
Oh, so then disattach yourself. But then it's still
No.
it's still an exhortation to us, right? That we should do that.
Okay. All right.
Sometimes people see the evil people prosper, and people have an immense propensity to convince themselves, oh, maybe it's not so evil. Look, this person is succeeding in his evil deeds. Maybe it's not too bad.
Okay, very good. And the final question is, and if you remember when we started learning, and we need always to see this through the lens of, who remembers? What is the lens we need to see Pirkei Avos, these ethical teachings from? A particular lens. What is that?
The Benoni?
No. It's all.
Who said it?
Sorry, Marcy, go ahead.
Who said it?
Well, no,
What's their
well,
background?
oh, so the background is that this is not the letter of the law. This is Milsi de Chasidusa, which means beyond the letter of the law. These teachings here, right? This is from the Mishnah. 60 tractates of the Mishnah, 59 of them are about the letter of the law. This is beyond the letter of the law. So then the question becomes, how are these statements beyond the letter of the law? But that you shouldn't befriend, that you shouldn't attach yourself to an evil person? I mean, that should, that sounds more like the law than beyond the letter of the law, right? Stay away, distance yourself from a bad neighbor. That sounds like the law more than beyond the letter of the law. In other words, the law would be that's okay, but no, that doesn't sound right. Is that clear? That question is clear?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to do this now in two parts. Well, we're going to first understand the simple meaning based on the Rambam, the Bartanura, and other commentators. And then we're going to dig a little deeper to try to appreciate, okay? So now let's follow, who was it that brought up from the previous Mishnah? Who said that from the previous Mishnah? Is it Saul, you? Or Leah? I don't remember who. Whoever said from the previous Mishnah. So there's a connection. We're going to the next level. So we said you should make your home open to the sages, right? Then now you got, in the last Mishnah we learned yesterday, you got to choose your one specific, special teacher and mentor, right? So now we're talking about, well, okay, where are you going to be now geographically, physically, in choosing a residence? So you need to find a place that there is going to be proper, I think someone mentioned it already, I remember, good neighbors, that you have good neighbors. Even if you're a righteous, and this is in Rabbeinu Yonah says this, and other commentators, that even if you're a good person, a righteous person, you will still be affected because of the negativity, the sins of bad neighbors.
Neighborhood or the neighbors? The neighborhood you're talking about?
Neighbors make the neighborhood, right? Neighbors make the neighborhood.
You can have good neighbors when you move in, and 2 months later they move out, and you get rotten neighbors. So
okay. Yeah, okay, yeah, you're right. Okay, does that mean you have to sell your house? I'm not certain that that's what it means to sell your house, right? So the simple meaning is we are affected by our surroundings. We want to bring sages into our home. The 2 Mishnahs ago, we said bring sages into your home, that you rub shoulders. Remember, we spoke at great lengths about creating what's called an atmosphere, right? A makif, as it's called in Hebrew. A makif means to create the atmosphere, even though the sages, they're going to talk amongst themselves on a level that you may not appreciate because you're not one of those sages, but you're creating that beautiful atmosphere. Now, at the same time, that's the asay toiv, that's the good part, but there's a negative part. What's the negative part? The other makif, the other surroundings that you have, and those surroundings are bad neighbors. So we start it off first with the positive, right? Now we're going that it's not sufficient that you have that positive influence within your home, right? That you open up your home to learned people, but make sure that makif that's beyond your home also is a healthy one and a good one. That's a simple meaning. Okay? That's a simple meaning. Now, that you should not befriend a wicked person. Simple meaning is, so it brings out in the Medrash a metaphor that when you walk into a tannery and you bought no leather, you bought nothing, you still come out smelling foul, because a tannery stinks to high heaven. At least back in the day, I don't know, I haven't been in one. So the Gemara says, right? The tannery, I mean, you're taking hides of animals and, working them over. I don't know, modern day tanneries, maybe there's something very different. I'm not certain. But the fact is, again, back in the day, it stunk. You came in, you didn't buy anything. You didn't do anything. But just by the fact you were there, you are affected in an ill way. That's what the Mishnah is coming to say in a very simple way. Therefore, be careful who your friends are. Be careful who your friends are. Okay. Again, that's
Or be careful where you go. Sorry. Or be careful where you go.
No.
The influence of where you're going. If you're going someplace and it's smelling or a bad place for you, or it's not going to be conducive to goodness and cleanliness, and it's going to screw your mind up or get you dirty physically, mentally, or spiritually.
Right. Absolutely. But remember the context over here, that was a metaphor to appreciate that even when, you think that a friend may not have an ill effect on you when they are negative. It's not true. It's not true. Batya, go ahead.
Hi, I want to say I had a friend that goes along with what you're saying who liked playing Go, and she asked me to go with her one time. And so I went into this building with her, and in this building was a room full of smoke, tobacco smoke smell. And when I left with her, I went with her, and after I left, I had the smell attached to me. And even though I don't smoke, or I'm not a smoker, it would give the appearance because someone else, even though I didn't smoke, I was there and I was present, and that I was in the environment of smokers. So this goes along. In other words, the people that we have around us, whatever they're doing, it does linger on to us, and then if we're around them enough, it will attach itself to us. So there's something to be said is you are who you surround yourself with.
Right. Actually, Batya, thank you for sharing that. Let me take that metaphor actually a little further, and it's actually, what's it called? Secondhand smoke. So not only do your clothes stink, but God forbid, secondhand smoke can lead to something very disastrous. So actually, that's a beautiful metaphor. Thank you for sharing that. So now let's go on to the third point, and the simple understanding, right? Simple understanding, and the connection between the first two and the third is, and I think Eugenia, you kind of mentioned it. Do we see wicked people? How do we? King David says, "Wicked people prosper," right? You see that when you do bad things, that you have a gain from it, right? So when we see that, it can talk to our animal soul and say, I'm going to follow that example. I'm going to connect myself to that person. He's prosperous. He took a few people down with him. He did things that are maybe not so but he's prosperous. And you know what? He didn't come down. Nothing negative happened to him. God didn't strike him down either. So, when you're in a difficult position, maybe in a particular point in life, you are going to maybe then want to be connected to that wicked person or that bad neighbor. So the Mishnah comes and tells us, don't despair from retribution just because the wicked did not get it today or tomorrow, but it will come. Goes around, comes around, that the retribution will be paid, will be meted out. So that's exhorting us to be aware that, hey, you may feel that being connected to this wicked individual is going to be beneficial. Well, it looks beneficial right now. Things seem rosy right now, but know that it won't be.
But maybe not in this world. Maybe we won't see it, right? Maybe we won't see that the person suffers and they will in the next world, right?
Yeah, actually, it's interesting. The Rambam is saying this about Tanura. I'm not certain that they mean the next world or this world. I'm not, could be. You're right. It might be. I'm not certain what the commentaries are saying. That's all that's a simple understanding of this Mishnah. Now, the challenge with that is, it doesn't sound like this is like beyond the letter of the law. This sounds more like, what you should be doing, right? This is appropriate behavior. This is not something that is kind of bringing me to the next level. Like
it sounds logical.
Yeah, logical and obligatory, as opposed to beyond the letter of the law. So obviously we got to dig a little deeper to appreciate that what this statement is saying is on one level simple, but on another level much more profound and much deeper idea. And that's when we take apart the words and we become a little more exacting, like the word distance yourself, to not connect yourself, right? And that will give us a better understanding. So I want to go first to the concept of wicked, because that's the word we're using here, Russia, right? What does it mean, wicked? What is wicked? Who is wicked? What does that mean exactly? How do you define wicked? Anybody? Oh, goes down just like water. Okay, it's water. But maybe I'm tricking you. I don't know. L'chaim, everybody. L'chaim, l'chaim. So, what's wicked? Who's wicked? What does that mean? That's so like not PC today, It's almost like I'm afraid.
Subjective.
I'm afraid that if on Facebook I might be they might take me off because say the word wicked. Now I guess it depends what you're saying wicked is. If you can if it's wicked from the right or wicked from the left, so that might be an indicator of anyway.
Wicked is wicked.
So right. So, but define that to me. What's wicked?
One who separates himself from the community.
Okay, very good, Marcy. Thank you. Someone who separates themselves from a community. Okay. What else?
Antithesis of God.
Well, I'm sorry, David.
Antithesis of God.
Antithesis of God. Okay, excellent. Very good. There's some feedback over there. Oh, I'm sorry, someone else was speaking?
Yeah, I
Welcome.
said someone goes against the ethical Torah principles.
Okay, someone goes against the ethical Torah principles. Excellent. Welcome, Katie. Just came on. Thank you for joining. Anybody else?
I was trying to go through the thought process of what you've taught us in Tanya, starting with the righteous, someone who has complete control over their thoughts, speech, acts, and actions, and have transformed their heart. And then the Beinoni being the one who has complete control over their thoughts, speech, and actions, but is still needs to transform the heart. And the Rasha would be, I guess, somebody who has no
Everyone
control
else.
over the
Everyone
Right.
else.
With everyone else.
Very good. So wicked.
Depends on what level.
So yeah, it depends, right? There's different levels there too. So wicked means that which conceals the presence of God, godliness. That which conceals the presence of God, right? That's really what's wicked. So the action that we take, for example, that conceals the presence of God, right? You raise your hand, God forbid, to hit somebody, you know, in not in self-protection, you know, in self-defense, but to hit somebody, that's wicked. The act is wicked. Why? Because it's concealing the presence of God. There's no goodness there. There's no godliness there, right? Goodness and holiness is when you stretch that same arm and you're giving, you know, tzedakah, or you're helping someone, you know, carry a heavy load that they have, or whatever the case may be, right? So that's what wickedness would be defined. So a wicked person is someone who that's the kind of life that they are, you know, engaged in. One that is not about connecting to God, bringing bringing goodness into this world, but hiding that, being concealed, right? And that doesn't necessarily mean you did horrific acts, like, you know, hitting somebody. It could be just something that is self-directed, ultimately is concealing the connection to God, right? So now the act itself is not, because when you give charity in the act itself, there is a connection, right? So that's what, now let's play that back now. So so ultimately, there's actually only one wicked thing. Only one wicked thing, person, or I don't know if person's the right word, but thing. And what's that? My evil inclination in my body. Because what's its agenda is to conceal a connection to God. Because all it wants is self-preservation. The body wants self-preservation at its basic nature. More than that, it wants pleasure. The animal soul wants notoriety, wants feel good, right? Not do good, be good, feel good. Now, you might do good in order to feel good, right? But that feel good is concealing that, right? So the only wicked thing there is something inside of me called the animal soul. Now, and the body. Now, its nature is wicked. Its agenda is wicked, right? We don't, and we'll get into that in a moment to explain that a little more, right? So that's really, so instead of like instead of seeing wicked outside of me, there's a wicked within me. And with that, now let's understand this a little differently. So the Rambam says, right, that in life, you should take the middle road in character qualities. You shouldn't be overly giving or overly stingy. You should be giving, but not like, whatever. Give everything and, have nothing.
Not extreme. Not extreme.
Not extreme, right? The only extreme should be in when it comes to one's to gaiva, to haughtiness, right? But you should be in the middle of the road. However, what happens as we have the wickedness in us, which means we have a natural tendency of, let's say, being very stingy, right? So that comes from that's a natural tendency. That's covering over something divine in me, right? So what am I supposed to do there? What does Rambam say you do?
Go the extreme. Go the opposite.
You have to go the opposite extreme. He says, like a tree. When a tree is bent over to one side, to get it straight, you have to bend it to the other extreme, and then finally it'll come to the middle. So he says, be overly giving, and eventually you'll come to the middle ground, right? So what does it mean here? Distance yourself then from such a neighbor. So now, what if I have a neighbor that's the middle of the ground, so to speak, middle of the road rather, right? This person's the middle of the road kind of person. They're really balanced. They're really balanced individual. So I might think I'm going to follow his way because he's a balanced guy, but I'm not him. If I have this character trait in me of the stinginess, don't distance yourself from the bad neighbor. What's bad? That you should take the example for him in something that is not meant the example you should take, because you need to go to the other extreme. Whole different understanding of what it means bad neighbor now, right? That's a different understanding of what it means a bad neighbor. In other
Because he
words,
can't help you get to where
the
you have
bad
to go.
neighbor. So the bad neighbor over here is not a bad person, but the neighboring of him is bad for me, because I have this challenge in my life, and if I'm going to learn from him because the way he is, I won't overcome my stinginess or my jealousy, whatever it is that I'm extreme about, and this person's middle of the road about. I'm not going to overcome it. So he's a bad neighbor for me to be my example in life. That's a different take. Now that's already, a kind of like beyond the letter of the law. In other words, I should be so discerning in what I need in my divine service and how I need to improve myself, how I need to be a better person. I am so self-aware of where my challenge is that when I look at this neighbor and I see, wow, he ain't got this challenge. He's really, he's great in this area, right? Where I have the challenge. Well, he's a bad neighbor for you to learn from, because you're going to feel, oh, I'm going to be like him, but you can't become like him, the middle of the road, because you're extreme. You need to go to the other extreme. So you need to learn from someone who's going to be a good example for you, right? Who's going to be someone who had the same problem you had and how they got to the middle of the road. But this neighbor is a bad for you as a living example for you, because this is his character. You don't have that character. So are you going to learn from him? How are you going to learn from him? He's just naturally middle of the road, good guy, generous, the way he's supposed to be generous, not overly generous, not too little. Again, this is the example, right? So you need to find an individual who's going to be your good neighbor. In other words, you're the good example for you on how to overcome your challenge. It's a different understanding now. Is that clear? Yeah? L'chaim, l'chaim, l'chaim. So what's amazing here is a self-awareness you need to have of what your struggle is and who is the person who's going to be the good neighbor to teach you. So here, good neighbor, again, this is not the simple meaning, right? This is a deeper meaning that we're talking about over here.
Rabbi,
Yes, Reggie.
does that tie into the previous where it says acquire for yourself a friend, like a true friend that will help keep you on an even balance? Is that what the tie-in is on the previous then? A good
Yeah.
neighbor?
Yeah, yes.
That's how I interpreted it.
Yes. Yeah, definitely there's a tie-in over there, but there's still a distinction because
Okay.
because remember the good friend, what was the good friend for? The highest level, of a good friend. I'm sorry, go ahead. Batya, you wanted to share?
Yes, I said a good friend is there to listen, like to be like a sounding board, so to speak, and not maybe necessarily to do anything or even offer any advice, but just to be there.
So in yesterday's class, we defined that as a lesser friend. That's a lower level of friendship, right? Being a sounding board, because
Paying for acquiring a friend, which is like a business deal.
well, right, but that is not a real. That's not an acquisition where you, as we explained yesterday, the real friend is someone who both together you want to help each other to become the best you could become. So that person will, will not judge you, but that person can, can be very critical in helping you to reach where you need to go, right? Not critical in a judgmental way, but critical in a way to help you. In other words, there's something greater than the two of you that you're striving together to become better people, better Jew, right? And therefore you're devoted to each other in that manner, so then you could be honest and real with each other, and again, not worried about the judgment, but that doesn't mean there isn't anything that might be critical in order to help you to arrive to a better place in your life. That's a real, and that's something to acquire. You have to acquire each other, so to speak, because you both are that. You both have that in your devotion to each other. Where the lower friend is, lower level would be that my friend is just a sounding board, and sometimes it's not such a healthy thing, because then I'm just using my friend to get it off my chest and not to really grow and improve.
Exactly.
Right. So real friendship is that we're there for each other, that we can help each other to grow. So that, Reggie, absolutely, there's a tie-in with that idea with a neighbor, right? But that friend may not be the exact person who's got that, that issue that you do, and therefore you striving to become, to struggle with what you're struggling with. Remember, what's wicked? Wicked is only the my negativity that I have within me, that I'm struggling with. That's the wickedness that we're talking about. That wickedness means I'm bent off the road in a negative way, falling off the proverbial what's it called? Horse and buggy, right? And I want to come back to the middle ground. And so I need to go to the other extreme. So I need to find a neighbor, or a neighbor meaning like a good neighbor, a good example, neighborly example, right, of an individual who can help me with that. Right. And that's going to be a good friend in the end. It's got to be a good friend ultimately, you know. So the two times, there's a little distinction though.
But I wouldn't even go to my neighbors. You know what I'm saying? So I don't understand that concept, because
No, we
I wouldn't go to.
explained neighbor is in a different, there's a simple meaning of neighbor. And now we're explaining neighbor means that person next to me who I am taking a living example from. Remember, your neighbors are affecting you. Remember that, right? Okay, Saul, thank you. Remember, your neighbors are affecting you on a simple level. On a deeper level, who are those people that are close to me, that are the example for me, that are going to help me in the struggle that I have? So that's the neighbor I've got to settle next to. Again, it's not a geographical thing. It's not about, you know, it's about connecting with that person who's going to help me with the thing I'm particularly struggling with. So for example, you know, one of the things I think, you know, what I do is I run a drug crisis center called Chabad Lifeline. I'm the ultimately responsible for it, but I have a huge staff, and I have other people that are my sister, my brother-in-law, that they really run the place, you know, they on a daily basis. But the point is that an addict, right, has gone through certain struggles of life. Well, guess what? They're the right neighbor for the guy who's now in his addictions and throes of addiction to be able to help that person. So you're going to come, you know, I don't think, I might have an addiction to some water and some coffee and some learning Hasidus, but those might be not such bad addictions. But I never had a drug addiction, an alcohol addiction, or any of, you know, the regular kind of addictions, right? So when someone has an addiction and comes to me, so I help them as best as I can because of, you know, being in the business so many years, I know something. But in the end, I'm not the one who's going to really be the good neighbor to help them. I'm not going to be their sponsor. They need someone who went through that and then has the intimate awareness and knowledge of how to get through it. I'm not going to be the one. Can help on some level, but that's the good neighbor we're talking about that you need to find. I'd be a bad neighbor for that person. If I'm going to be their sponsor, I'm going to be a bad neighbor. Distance yourself from that bad neighbor. Doesn't mean that that person's bad, but their neighbor means they're next to me to be that example for me in my life. Hey, that, and how to get through this. I'm not going to help them the way that what they really need. I haven't been there. Now is that bringing clarity? Thanks for pushing me, Leah. Thanks for pushing me. That really solidified it for me. Thank you. Thank you. Beautiful. So that's what this statement is saying over here on a deeper, profound level. Now let's go to the next. The next thing. So remember, so now let's take wicked on two levels. One is wicked, another person, right? Who's really, and what are we saying wicked? Someone who, you know, listen, we all do wrong things, right? But, you know, we are here. The reason you are all here is because really what you want to make your life about is, doing what God needs from you, another mitzvah, goodness and kindness, that's what you're devoted to. Then you have people who are totally not. They have no interest. And, proof is, I hate to say this, that, we only got about, 20 people, that are, well, maybe a little more because we have on Facebook too. So maybe we have 20, 30 people that are here right now. When there should be thousands of people here right now.
Quality over quantity.
Thank you, Katie. Hey, Katie, why can't we have both? but you're right. I won't argue. We got the creme de la creme, the quality of all quality. That's no question of, no argument there. But I'm still gonna suggest that we should have it all. And
We should all reach out to a friend and add some.
I'll reach out to a friend. Exactly. Thank you, Richard. So there are then people who are not really in the same kind of devoted lifestyle or commitment and so on. How do you deal with that person? So we had the previous Mishneh, and who brought that up before? The previous Mishneh, right? That it seems to be now the opposite, right? Who said that before? Tim?
I thought Reggie.
Saul. I think Saul did.
Saul? Oh, okay.
I don't know.
Thank you. L'chaim. So it's actually, again, everything fits in, pieces of the puzzle. And what we have to be specific is, again, on the words, al tischaver, which means don't connect to the Russia. So let me ask you folks, we spoke in ourselves that there's a Russia in me, my evil inclination, the body, right? Meaning that its nature is self-directed. But I have another nature in me, and it's godly, right? So the wicked person who's like not in the same direction in life as the quality people, as Katie said over here, do they have both things, or they only have one thing? They have both things. Just like I have the higher self and I have the lower self, just like I have a divine soul and I have an animal soul and a body. So likewise, so does that person who is, not here with us or not interested in this path. They still have that. So what's the Mishneh saying? Don't connect yourself to the wickedness of that person. Don't connect. One thing is, if you connect to the wickedness, then when you wrestle with a dirty person, you get dirty. You're going to get dirty if you connect to the wickedness of them. Connect to the divine within them. Connect to the divine within them. Embrace that. Don't attach yourself. Don't attach yourself. That's what the word tischaver means. Don't attach yourself to meaning to be influenced by their wickedness. That's the first point. That doesn't mean you should distance yourself. It doesn't say don't distance yourself. The first thing was distance yourself, because that bad neighbor, if I'm going to be the sponsor for an addict, I'm a bad neighbor. I'm a bad neighbor for them. Not a bad person, but a bad neighbor. I'm not a bad person. I'm a bad neighbor because I'm not the one who's going to be the inspiration and the influence and give them what they need. So so distance yourself from such a person because you need to have the good neighbor who's going to be their good sponsor. Here we're saying don't distance yourself from that person. Didn't use that. Should have said distance yourself and don't connect. But it didn't say distance, because you shouldn't distance yourself from a wicked person. You can embrace them. Don't embrace their wickedness. Don't connect to their wickedness. Don't be influenced in it and don't be connected to it. Don't even see it if possible. Connect to the divine within them. different explanation. Very different. That's like, wow. That's like, wow. Now that's on one level. Another level, again, the wicked isn't within you. So the wicked within you, don't connect to it. Meaning, don't make that your, feeding that negativity within you or battling it. Meaning, if we're in the third part of Tanya, we're going to get into that. You're going to fast a lot, to deprive your body. You're going to, roll in the snow, so self-mortification to give it to, your butt. No, don't do that. Don't become attached to your body to try to bring self-mortification to the body, to torture. Work with it. Work with it. Talk to it. How do you talk to the body? Right? Even your body has an element, it's self-directed. Your body is caring for the pleasure. So talk to it. Say, you know what? Shabbos is coming. Gonna have beautiful, great food. Come and celebrate with me. Right? Come and celebrate. You're gonna enjoy it. Sometimes that's how you gotta talk to a person, right? Right? Chulent is great. It's amazing. You get them that way you'll get them entirely. So don't self-mortification. Don't give in to its agenda. Don't befriend it and on its terms. Don't connect to it and be influenced on its terms. You can still talk to it, right? So sometimes, we got to talk to our negative side and say, I'm lazy. I don't want to come and learn. Yeah, but come on. Every time you come and learn, you walk away and you're walking on a cloud. Now, is that why you should be learning? No, you should be learning because it's a mitzvah and you connect to God and everything we've learned in Tanya, right? And sometimes you got to talk to that part of me, right? And you walk on a cloud afterwards. You do so much good afterwards. Your day goes wunderbar. So don't attach yourself to the wickedness of it, but that doesn't mean you distance yourself from it. Bring it along for the ride. Let it know that it's also gaining by doing a mitzvah.
So would it be like looking at it as we all have our own duality, and whenever you bring two people together, then you have two people with their own dualities, and then the godly part of each person should get together as opposed to the wicked or animal side of each person.
Right. I think we mentioned that idea
Right.
when two people get together. So really what it is again, when you're getting together and this was about a friend, right? True friendship means that two divine souls are getting together, not two animal souls. Because my animal soul wants what it wants and your animal soul wants what it wants. And, we may do for each other, but we only do it for what I gain. So really there's, it's not really coming together, right? So it's only one animal soul. But when two real friends come together, so it's two divine souls because they're coming together for a higher purpose, right? To bring something more good to this world, good to each other. So exactly. So in that sense, yes, very good. So the third point now is, oh my gosh. The third point is like this.
Retribution.
Yes, the third point, retribution. Right, exactly, Katie. So the third point about retribution is like this. We've discussed this idea before. And it's very important to appreciate that, retribution, you could see it as punishment, or you could see it as, we've learned many times, a consequence, right? When you eat a complete lemon meringue pie, there's a consequence for that. You're going to have an upset stomach. I mean, you ain't going to feel great, right? That's no doubt. So here, punishment means consequence. Retribution means a consequence. God is not, God forbid, seeking retribution. Not at all. That's the first level. The second thing is, not only is it a consequence, but moreover, it is really, what's retribution? Give me another word for retribution.
Cleansing?
Thank you. Which means rehabilitation. It's rehabilitation. That's what it is. As the metaphor I've given so many times, right? When a toddler is playing out in a rainy day in the mud outside, and the mother brings the toddler into a bath, and maybe a little hot bath, because you need a hotter bath to get off the dirt, and scrubby to get between the nails. It's painful, but that's rehabilitation, that's cleansing, and that's its purpose. So we need to appreciate that first and foremost, right? And then so the Rebbe explains like this, again, how you sometimes where you put the comma or you put periods will give you a different explanation. So what do we say? First of all, do not despair of divine retribution. So first of all, if you have worked on yourself, even if you're righteous, don't despair. There's divine retribution. Why? How come? That just keeps us always aware that there's a consequence. And therefore, we don't take, life too lightly, because we feel, we've got our game together. So, you can relax in the sense of not being self-aware. No. Need to know that. Deeper is in this face of something that is a retribution, don't despair. So it's a play, it's the opposite. Turn it around. You're getting retribution. Don't despair because of it. Why shouldn't you despair? Because you need to know that that's coming as a cleansing, a rehabilitation. And therefore, don't despair when you're going through troubles, when you're going through difficulties, when you feel that you're getting retribution. As a matter of fact, I just got a phone call. I got the message because I was away before, from someone who, that's what he feels. He feels, the retribution of God in his life. And he feels it like a punishment. And I called the person, but I called him back, but I couldn't. I left him a message. It's like, God forbid. That's terrible. And he is in despair because of that. That's missing an understanding that God is, first of all, puts into the world consequences from our behavior. And we see that again in the lemon meringue pie, right? Well, some of you have a real strong stomach, Okay, so eat 3 of them. And then tell me, at some point it's, there's consequences. But then the point of that is to rehabilitate ourselves. So why would there be such a consequence of negativity that comes from whatever? is that we should become self-aware and that, no, this is in order to bring me to a better place. Same thing with addiction. And it's the perfect example of someone, they go so far down a slippery slope. It's, oh my gosh, in places what addiction does is just horrific. And, but ultimately when they can and do cleanse and rehabilitate themselves, what kind of enhanced life and awareness they have of self, awareness of others, and to be there for others is like unbelievable, enormous, beautiful. So that's another level to understand that. And so never give up. Never, in the face of retribution, do not despair. That's the higher level of, because we're all going to have moments where we feel the pain and the suffering and the challenge and so on. And it's, I'm just seeing this guy in front of me, and the voice note that he left me, it was like, oy, but, and it's hard, how do you bring a person from that place of despair that they should not be there? There's something fundamental that's missing. And not that I'm not to judge the person, but there's that appreciating that's can't be. Now sometimes things are difficult and really tough, and it's hard to take, and so it's not about judging another person, but we need to know for ourselves never to be in that place of despair. So how would you not get to that place of despair? So first of all, if you're going to have a good neighbor, in other words, when am I going to have my challenges in life and my things that are going to be full of despair? Based on my wickedness inside. In other words, my going over the line in my character qualities, or the things that I do that I am over the line, and and especially when it's an extreme way, right? That's going to bring me down the slippery slope. But if I have a good neighbor, someone who is able to help me in that place where I am, I'm not going to get to despair. I won't get to that despair. And furthermore, then I could connect to that wicked person who's having the same difficulty, and I'm going to be there for them. Why? Because I'm not going to connect to their wickedness. I'm going to connect to their higher self and not be influenced by that negativity, and be able to inspire and influence them. So you see how it's all connected? That just came to me. That was my own idea. Take it or leave it. I didn't these ideas that I floated are from the teachings of the Rebbe primarily, that come together. But now to tie that all together, right, of how you shouldn't despair in the face of the retribution of life. So again, first and foremost is obviously understanding that it's really a consequence of something within me, and it's ultimately rehabilitate me. So when I'm going to have the good neighbor, distancing from the bad neighbor, but having the good neighbor, that's going to help me. That's going to help me to deal with it. So I'm going to get the proper sponsor, and then from there, I'll be able to give back and to attach to another, and to give them. All right, folks, I'm over my allotted time.
Vilma has a question.
Oh, Vilma, go ahead.
Hi, I've been listening to this concept of divine retribution, and it's hard to understand, like while you're going through it, that there are people, and I've read stories in Hasidus, that there are extraordinary people that take the good and the bad, and it's all the same to them. They have this level of awareness that everything comes from God. And so it's all the same to them, whether it's good or bad. It's like a really high level of awareness that most of us don't have. While we're going through pain, it hurts. But there are some people that have had so much pain that they just and they're the kind of people that are very like spiritual, that they just take it as something that comes from God, and they know that it is too for the good.
Right.
So another thing that I'm aware of is that this divine retribution, if we don't, I guess, change and refine and, do teshuva and all these things, that we will have divine retribution upon expiry, death of some sort, because nobody's perfect, and like to perfectly cleanse ourselves.
Right.
And
Yep.
it comes from God.
Yeah. Absolutely true. Yes.
Rabbi,
Let me just comment. Okay,
okay,
go ahead.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead, Tim. I just wanted to comment on what Vilma said. So we're going to learn in the fourth part of Tanya an idea, and we actually had it in chapter 27 already, that in the worlds above, you have the hidden world and the revealed world. So from the revealed world comes revealed goodness down in this world. The hidden world comes goodness, but it's hidden. It's a higher world, and it comes down here in a hidden fashion. It's more powerful, but we are not a vessel to contain it properly. So like looking at the sun on a very bright day, that's amazing. It's beautiful, but it's blinding. It's too much good. Too much good is blinding. And that's what the strong sun does. It brings too much that it's painful. So, but it's coming from a higher place. And the purpose of that is to bring me ultimately to a closer place with God. So the truly righteous, they care more about being close to God than having something from God that is, in their estimation and experience, good. So what for them is defined as good is only closeness to God. And therefore, when they have a painful experience, when they don't perceive it. I mean, they may have pain, but they're not experiencing it in a negative way. They're experiencing it as a endearment and a closeness to God. Metaphorically, when a parent is harsher on their own child than their neighbor's child. How come? Because this is your child. Now, I don't mean harsh in a abusive way, or and this is a metaphor, right? But a real good parent is more stringent and strict on their own kid than their neighbor's kid. I mean, yeah, but why? I mean, why? Because this is your kid, and your devotion and commitment to them is greater. Your love for them is greater than your neighbor. So your neighbor, howdy neighbor, and whoa, wonderful kids. You're a kid, wonderful kids, but you could have done this a little. When the previous Rebbe was 6 years old, his mother, I think he was 6, or maybe he was 8, but a lofty soul. His cut up some cantaloupe for him, and he took it into the courtyard where some friends were playing, and he gave cantaloupe to his friends. His father saw what was going on, the Rebbe Rashab, and he afterwards, at the right timing, the right moment, some point later, not then. He called him in. He says, "You indeed shared with your friends. Wonderful. However, you didn't do it with complete kindness and devotion." The boy started to cry. So much so, yeah, this is not a PC story. You're not going to like it, but it's okay. He started to cry, so much so that he threw up even the cantaloupe. The mother came in and says, "What are you doing to the boy? Be easy on him. Why are you being so?" He says, "No, it's good. It's good. This trait will be infused in him now as a result." When he told the story over as an adult, many kids, when they tell stories about their parents and what they did to them, the story of the mother. The mother says, "My son, he's so great. He spends $500 a week speaking for 2 hours only about me to the shrink." That's how wonderful he is about me, right? Always talking about me. He's so wonderful, right? So I'm not talking about that. When he was older, he said, and he told her, and he concluded the story. He says, "That's education." Who was he strict on? Not someone else's kid, on his own.
What did he do wrong? I'm sorry, I didn't get it. What did he do? He
He
didn't
said, "Indeed you shared. Indeed you shared," he said. Which, but you didn't do it with a full heart, he said. Didn't do it with a full heart. Right? The mother was upset because he was crying. But he said, no, that was wonderful. And he concurred later on in life when he told over the story that's education. Because what it did, as his father said, was imbue in him in that when you're giving, give with a full heart. Give with a full heart. Right? Now, why am I saying that? Why did I tell that story? Oh my gosh, it's a beautiful story. But why did I tell it, Tim? What was the point before that? I can't hear you, Tim.
You were answering Vilma's question.
Right. Right. Remind me, Bill. Vilma. Huh? Go ahead, Tim. Who remember?
Sorry, I'm actually listening. So I think you answered it. I'm not quite sure. So
the answer being that, okay, I got it. That that was a metaphor to explain that when we get retribution, it's coming from a higher place, from God, and it's the point of it is to bring us closer to Him. Just like the Rebbe Rashab was hard, call it, if you want to call it retribution, call it rehabilitation. That's what it was. It was a cleansing process that he was helping his son through. Yes, he was only maybe 8 or 10 years old, right? But he became a tzaddik, a righteous person. So, he was able to take it, and the father obviously knows what he can take. And as he concurred later on when he told the story, that this is education, right? I don't suggest we necessarily do this with our kids, because I don't think our kids are, such lofty souls that'll be able to take it. But the point of the story is to use it as a metaphor to understand that when you are closer to somebody, you will give the retribution or the rehabilitation to that person, to that child that's yours, as opposed to your neighbor. So same thing God does to us. It's a sign of the love that He has for us when we're going through that. So instead of experiencing the pain and the discomfort, recognize at the same moment they may be painful, but this is to bring me closer to God, because God feels closer to me. That's a powerful idea. And with that, I got to say goodbye. I mean, listen,
That was good.
After that, that's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Powerful stuff. Powerful stuff. All right, folks, a pleasure. Thank you, everybody on Clubhouse and Facebook and everywhere, and of course Zoom. Okay, don't forget, folks, tonight we're going to be at 8 o'clock, Montreal, Atlanta, and, coast to coast. And everywhere else, come and join us for Lag BaOmer. And tomorrow, special Fabringen at noontime. Going to be Mendy and I together, and Fabringen for Lag BaOmer and so on. All right, folks. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.